Welcome. I'm Pam Laricchia from livingjoyfully.ca, and today I'm here with Laura Bowman. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
Laura is the founder of the East Tennessee Unschooled Summer Camp for Teens, and I have heard wonderful things about the camp from various teens and mentors over the years, and I'm so glad she chose to join me on the podcast to share her experience. So to get us started, Laura, can you share with us a bit about you and your family?
Yeah. So Scotty and I have been married for 25 years. We have 3 kids, Samuel, Silas, and Sadie. And they all actually started out at camp as campers in 2010 and are all 3 now staff. So that's been pretty exciting. They're Samuel's 24, Silas is 21, and Sadie is 19.
Oh, cool. So was 2010 the first year?
Yes.
That's
yes,
awesome.
that was the first.
Around a bit. Couldn't find that. That's awesome. Look at that. 9th year. Yay. So before we dive into camp, I'm just curious how you discovered unschooling and what your family's move to unschooling looked like.
Well, when we first had Samuel, we talked about what we would do. We initially thought we would want to send him to like a private school, but we don't have any money. So we talked about homeschooling. So that was kind of like when we first, our first toe dipping into the whole idea of keeping our kids home. And it just sort of evolved from like our natural parenting to sort of like this gentle, relaxed homeschooling, because Samuel was only about 5 when he first actually asked to be like, have like workbooks or things. So we would get those fun things that you can get at the store that's like counting or coloring and things like that. And he wanted me to teach him how to read. So we did this whole lesson thing and we got about halfway through. It was like one of these like 100 lessons. Yeah. And he got really bored. And so he was reading fine and just wanted to just continue on. And we've always read lots of books. But I guess it sort of naturally evolved into leading or following what he wanted to do each day. And it was a lot of playing. I used to joke that Legos were our curriculum because it was just everything, colors, sorting, following directions, all of that. And I guess at some point I saw a book at the library and it said something about unschooling on it. And I was looking through it and I was like, oh, this sounds like what we do. Mm-hmm. And it was internet and all of that. And yeah, it was just a really gradual discovery of how to let go of a lot of the things that we learned growing up about, not just about school, but also about parenting, because I still had a lot of like control things with food and thinking certain things were too violent. Like I used to think that Pokemon was violent and I was like, you can't, I know Pokemon. And my kids like to make fun of me for that now. Cause I was like, ah. So yeah, I guess it was just a natural evolution to eventually finding online communities and becoming more involved in homeschooling groups. And when we moved to Charleston, when our kids were little, it was in 2004, I started a Charleston Unschooling homeschooling group there because there wasn't really one for that. And I don't think that that's still going. We only lived there for 3 years, but it kind of kept going for a little while, but I don't think it is anymore.
I love hearing those stories where, it all just came to, they all just came to you, but no, it's, what I love is noticing how you're just paying attention and open to seeing things in a new way, right? Like you were parenting in a different way, and it's like, hey, we don't want to bring school in, and you were just open, not even knowing that what you were doing. Like, I love that you were pretty much unschooling before you heard a thing about it. Right. Now, I feel like I was kind of attachment parenting before. I didn't hear about that until after I discovered unschooling. But yeah, I was always kind of the odd parent out, but it just felt more right to me than
Yeah.
what other people were doing. And that openness to seeing that and thinking your own thoughts and trusting yourself somewhat. I mean,
Yes.
you notice that you're different, right? You're different, right? But it
Yeah.
still feels
Yeah. It was definitely.
better.
Yeah, it was definitely an evolution from attachment parenting because we did have, extended breastfeeding and co-sleeping and home birth and all of those things. And it just seemed like just the natural progression and mutual respect, treating your children with the respect that you want to be treated and all of that. And, I think that one of the things about unschooling that I hear a lot is people want to do unschooling because they want like X outcome. They think if I do this, then this is the perfect child that I will make, and they think if they just follow all of that, then, but the one thing that you learn as your children grow and change, that they are an individual. They are their own person. And yes, your nurturing and all of that plays a big role in it, but ultimately you have to learn to let go a little bit of expectations and outcome. Because I think that if you hold too tightly to expectations and outcome of like, oh, if I do this, this, and this, then this is what my child will be, and this will be successful and all of that. If you hold on too tightly to that, it's very easy to find yourself in a situation where you're like, oh, well, that didn't turn out how I thought it would, or I was told this wouldn't happen if I did this. And so that's been a huge learning experience for me as my children are going into the adult years, is to let go of ideals and like, oh, they're not going to be exactly like me or exactly like the poster child for unschooling, and that they are their own amazing individual. My children are very creative driven. And so I think that there's like this, that there's an acceptance of that in the unschooling community, that it's not the typical, oh, I expect my child to go to college and be a doctor or whatever. It's like, if they want to be a musician or an artist, it's much more accepting. So that's been really great for me, because that's the direction my children have all tended to go in. So anyway, just that, realizing and accepting from an early age that your child is their own person, and that this path to unschooling, even though you hear all of these amazing stories and people talk about, oh, my child, no problems, this and all these wonderful things, that you have to accept your child where they are at every stage in their development, and who they are and the individual that they are.
Yeah. So I just got goosebumps because that really is that's the root, the most important, I think, deschooling piece, or just paradigm shift. Because we choose unschooling for reasons, right? We want certain outcomes, or we don't want to do certain things, right? There are reasons for choosing it. And we listen to experienced unschooling parents and read books, and, this X, Y, and Z, happens. You know what I mean? We've got great relationships with our kids, what the things are that we're looking for. But yes, that moment, it's like, you're going along, you're unschooling, this is great. And then when you can make that shift, it's like it's a whole new world opened up, isn't it? I mean, you're still unschooling, you're still everything, but it's another layer of realizing this unschooling is not about me. Right? It's really about them and who they are. And then when you can like I always say, step back, and it feels like that, but yet again, you're not literally stepping away, right? You're still engaged with them. You're still helping them. You're still like living side by side with them. But you can see them more clearly, like in their choices. And it's that trust level to release enough to get to that spot where you can see and you can realize, oh, I would have suggested this, or I would have made this choice if it were me, and all those things.
Right.
And then recognizing that, oh my gosh, they made that choice because that is so them. And it's awesome. And it's so much better than I could have, even though it's not my ideal. It's not the expectation of, there's
Right.
the unschooling things we like, but then there's always that, imagining your child as an adult kind of deal, right?
Yeah.
And that whole idea of what's successful, etc. But yeah, when you see them being themselves, just being themselves out and about in just in the everyday things, the things that they choose to do, why they made that choice, why they chose not to do this, all those things, it really just them shining as themselves and their challenges too, right? Oh my gosh, you got me all excited here. Even when they're going through hard times, you still see them shining through it, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there will be hard times. Yeah, I think that there's that illusion that, like I said before, if I do X, Y, and Z, there'll be this outcome that there won't be any hard times. Yeah.
And that realization too that, okay, we're trying to get through these hard times to get to those perfect times. And then realizing that, oh my goodness, these hard times are our lives. It's not that our lives are on hold during these hard times to get to the good times. They're all valuable, important parts of our lives. They all make us who we are, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And even in the bad times or the harder times, we are still making choices, right? It's not that we lose our choice in those times. It's just more difficult environments, more difficult things have happened that are out of our control, all those things, but we still get to choose that day what foot we put forward. Okay. That's cool, Laura. Okay, so let's dive into camp because you host, as I mentioned before, the East Tennessee Unschooled Summer Camp for teens. And in the last few months, Alec and Max have actually been on the podcast and both talked about how much they've enjoyed the experience and they're mentors now. So I would just love to hear the story behind how that camp came to be back in 2010.
Okay. Well, I have like a handful of memories from my childhood that are like really good. And some of those were spent at a lake where my grandma had like a camper set up. And so those are like some of my very, very best memories. And I always loved this idea of the community that was there, the games, the fires, the people that would just come out and hang out by the lake. And that has always been kind of in the back of my mind of this ideal life. And even when our second child, we just had Samuel and Silas, we bought a camper and moved into our camper and lived in it for about 3.5 years. And Sadie, our youngest, was actually born in that camper. And so we had this life that I really loved, and, just this whole camping lifestyle. And I always loved the idea of summer camps. And when I was younger, I had seen this movie and it was just about this summer camp that was getting old. I think it was Indian Summer or something. I can't remember the name of it now. All of a sudden, it's just not. But I always thought, oh man, it would be so cool to own a summer camp, and just had these ideals. Cut to, I guess, 2009. We were trying to find another location for our biannual event that we have in the spring and the fall, which is a family gathering. We were trying to find a new location, and Scotty was out on a bike ride and he went by this camp and he was looking around it and he thought it was really cool. He said, oh, this might be a cool location for ARG, which is the name of the event. It's Autodidactic Radical Gathering of Homeschoolers. And so me and my friend Ren, who's the one who started ARG, but I took it over later, we went out to look at the location, and I just was like, no, this isn't for ARG. This is my camp. And I just knew it in that moment. I was like, this is my camp. And in the fall, I guess it was in November of 2009, I created a Facebook group and said, I'm going to start a summer camp. Anybody who's interested. And then by the morning, I think we had like 60 members. It was like 5 o'clock. Well, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't sleep, and I got up and did that. And so by the time I got up the next day, it was already starting, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to do this. And we had our first August of 2010. So that was kind of like the quick version of how it happened.
Well, I love that it was something, it's something meaningful for you, right? You're trying to bring that idea of camp that you so enjoyed growing up. And then you came across this place that fit that perfectly. And then, all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, now I've got it. Let's just go see if anyone's as interested as I am.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so I will have the link in the show notes to the camp website. And I was looking through it. I have looked through it before, but I was refreshing it for our call. And daily meetings with the campers mentor group are one of the very few things that are required of campers during the week. And I imagine that's because you found those to be a valuable part of the camp experience for them. So I was wondering if you could share more about what those mentor group meetings are about and how they help.
Okay, so the mentor group is after breakfast. You meet with your mentor, and it's a small group of anywhere from 8 to 10 campers. And the idea behind it is that camp can be a big place with anywhere from 60 to 80 kids running around at any given time, and that can be really overwhelming to be like, oh, now I have to go make friends, and who do I meet? How do I meet them? And although we do have all types of activities to facilitate those types of meetings, like our icebreaker games and then different workshops and stuff like that, the mentor group gives you the same kids to meet with every single morning and play games and have discussions so that you're meeting people on a smaller scale that's more comfortable than just feeling overwhelmed by trying to meet all of the people at camp. And the mentors facilitate conversations and games and just make it a place that they can count on each day that's going to be the same. So that's basically what that is.
Yeah,
the core.
It feels like it's a grounding spot.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere where and like you said, it takes the pressure off the meeting people, the having to approach people or be open to it, etc. This is a spot, and yes, so the people are pre-selected. But so it's kind of just a different dynamic. So depending on which one works or fits better for them, for each individual camper that comes, right? They have lots of both. They have both those experiences, and then the mentors there too. That's a place where a camper can make a connection with someone who wants to make a connection with them, right? They want. As a mentor, I mean, that's part of their job. That's part of their work. And that's why they've chosen to be a mentor, because that's what they like to do. They want to connect with them and help them feel more comfortable there and help them figure out a way to be comfortable there, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and someone that they can come to if they just even need one-on-one time and guidance. And
I thought that was a really cool idea, to give them that space and having it every day. You know what I mean? That makes that consistency, that moment that they know they're going to touch, and then having it in the morning too, so they just feel a little bit grounded before they go out and approach their day. Yeah, I thought that made a lot of sense. So speaking of the day, what does the day at camp look like?
Well, we have our morning check-ins, which is one of the other required things is our check-ins, so that the campers come and they find their mentor and check in, let them know I'm up, I'm ready for breakfast, I'm ready, to start the day. That way, if there's anyone missing, we know right away. And when I say missing, I mean still in bed. Because the last thing we want is for campers to come to this week with all these great opportunities and then miss them. And I know that a lot of kids getting up in the morning is not their favorite, but they do it. They get up, they come. Sometimes, we'll send our junior mentors. If there's some kids that are still kind of haven't come in yet, we'll send them to check to make sure that they're okay. Sometimes they're just getting out of bed. They just a little groggy. Sometimes they were running behind in the showers or whatever. But for the most part, it's not too big of a struggle. Even when they have late nights, they still come, they show up and make sure that they check in with their mentor so that we know that they're okay. And sometimes they'll say, can I just go back to bed for a little while and skip breakfast? And that's totally fine because we always have food out. And sometimes Scotty will even make a plate. Scotty's my husband. He runs the kitchen. And sometimes so he will even save a plate for kids if he knows that they've had to go get a little extra sleep during breakfast. And then they get up a little bit later and go to their mentor group. But that doesn't happen all the time, but we do give room for that because we know how important sleep is, and eating's important too, but food's going to be there all day long. They will always have food available at any time of the day. There's snacks and things like that. So if they miss that in need of sleep, it seems more important. But they get used to it through the week. They find a rhythm.
Yeah.
So then we have breakfast, and then after breakfast, they go to mentor groups. And then after mentor groups, we have our first workshop slots. And that can be anything from just a discussion about a specific topic, or it can be an artsy craftsy type of thing, or it can be learning a dance. It can be a hike. There's lots of things always going on. And then after that first slot, then we have our next slot. And that's a little bit longer one for workshops that might take a little bit longer. Then after that, we have lunch. And then after lunch, we have a siesta, which is a time that gives everybody a chance to just go. Sometimes they'll go lay in the hammocks. We set hammocks up, and or they'll go back to their cabin, or they'll sit on the porch of the lodge, or they'll come inside. You can do whatever you want, which is pretty much all day long. You can do whatever you want. The workshops aren't required, but it's a time where nothing else is usually scheduled, so that they don't have that conflict between, do I want to rest and just hang out with my friends, or do I want to rush off to this other fun thing? So they don't have to choose. They can just rest or just talk with their friends or whatever. And then after the siesta, we have our afternoon activity, which is usually a bigger event. It can be the climbing tower and ropes course, swimming. It's like a 2-hour slot of time where you have this big outdoor type of activity. We've had ultimate frisbee games, and we have our field day. So that's when we have our big outdoor activity for the day is during that time. And then a lot of times kids will go take showers and then be back in time for supper. And then after supper, the mentors and we go to our staff cabin, and we have our little, our mentor meeting, I guess, is what it essentially is. We sit down and we talk about the day and see how everybody's doing. And during that time, our junior mentors are running activities, which is are like signing postcards so that they can send home. Here's one of them right here, actually. This is one from last year.
Yeah.
And they'll write postcards and send them home or to friends or wherever. They sign their camp directories. I have it here. Camp directories. People will sign. It's got pictures and a little bit about each other, and we'll sign it. So little things like that. Flashlight tag, or I guess we don't do flashlight tag anymore. We used to do flashlight tag, but then we realized it wasn't really dark enough. So they play games like sardines. Mm-hmm. So they just have a lot of fun things going on while myself and the mentors are in our little hour-long evening get-together. And then after that, we have our big evening activity, which is at the end of the week, it's things like, the dance and the talent show and skit night. But at the beginning of the week, we have more of like the icebreaker games and improv and things like that. So there's always some event scheduled in the evening. And then after that, they just hang out and have fun until they go off to bed. We have late night mentors. They don't do a morning group like the other mentors do, but they stay up with the kids and play games and talk and hang out until the kids are gently persuaded. Usually around 1:00, they start encouraging them to go to bed. And so that's the day at camp.
I really love hearing about the way you put it together. It really, it sounds like you just accommodated all the flow. You know what I mean? That can happen. And understanding having late night mentors, because some kids are going to want to stay up. They're going to be excited. They're going to want to chat. Some kids are night owls in general. And I noticed your night mentors stay up until the last child or teen goes to bed, right? So they're never on their own, alone. They've always got company. And that's why they aren't the morning mentors too, right? I mean, it's brilliant. And then having junior mentors as well, right? So they're in training. They're like paired up with a mentor as well. So they're seeing what the mentor does, and then they have their opportunity in the evenings for an hour to try leading things on their own as well, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so for the workshops and things during the day, are those hosted by campers usually, or?
The staff usually do the majority of the workshops. I do workshops. The campers do. The staff do workshops. Every now and then, we'll have a camper who wants to, share something that they're excited about. And teaching other campers, and so that happens every now and then. And it always is really fascinating to see how confident they are, and just something totally new that they've just brought to the camp experience, and it's exciting.
Yeah, it's something they're excited about, right? And it's just always fun to see somebody take that on when they're excited about something and they want to share it with people. So how many in those slots, how many kind of activities? Is there usually 2 or 3 going on that they're choosing from, or?
Yeah, usually we try not to have too much conflicting as far as what campers might be interested in. But yeah, there's usually a couple of things going on at each time, but we try not to have too many, more than like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
We've had discussions on how to go to school, or not go to school, but like go to college. It's usually a college discussion for unschoolers. And this past year, my son, my oldest, he actually did, a discussion that we've never had before, which was, what if you don't want to go to college? And that he was really surprised at how many kids turned up for that discussion. He was thinking nobody would be interested. And I was like, there's a lot of kids who aren't really interested. So that was pretty cool. And we try not to have something like that. We wouldn't have both of those going on at the same time. Yeah. So if that makes sense. So I try to, in scheduling them, try to make sure that, the interests aren't conflicting.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, because it really does, because, when people you don't want to put them in that situation often where they have to choose. I feel like they're missing out on something when they're doing something else. Right. Right. 'Cause you've got the week, you've got the time to play with, and them also knowing that none of them are requirements. These are for you to choose, because you're interested, because you want to participate, or even if you just want to kind of stand back and watch what's going on, etc.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. So it sounds amazing. And, you know, I can just see how you've brought that enthusiasm for camp that you had when you were younger and have brought all of it in. And it sounds wonderful. So, what advice would you have for parents who are just as excited about the idea and they think it would be awesome for their kid, but maybe their teen is a bit reluctant? You know, they bring up, hey, you want to go to camp, or hey, you do this, this, and this, and they're like, you know, I don't know, or that doesn't really sound like my thing. You know, I can imagine parents might be a little, I don't know, I don't want to go to pushy, but really.
Yes. And it comes from a place of excitement, because we see that, you know, as an adult, and we're like, wow, that looks like fun. I want to go. And so we want to be excited about it too. But we have had situations in the past where parents have had their kids come reluctantly, and it has turned out great. And then we've had other situations where even though the child was having a really great time, they felt like they needed to go home after a couple of days. They just weren't ready. Mm-hmm. And that's fine too. But I really encourage parents to listen to their kids, like they do in all the other aspects of their life. This is the same. Because if a child is not ready to come to camp, they might not have a good experience, and then they might not be willing to come back at a later time when they actually would be ready. And so it might spoil it for them to be in a situation that they're not quite ready for, whether it's sleeping away from home for the first time, because a lot of times kids come and camp is their first time sleeping away from home, and usually they're fine. But for the most part, if a child isn't excited about or wanting to come, and it's also scary and all of these other new things going on, it's going to not be a great experience for them. So like I said, we've had kids come and it was fine. They're like, oh, I'm so glad my parents made me come. But I don't think that that's ideal, you know, because that's you're taking a chance.
That's not under your control, right?
Right. Yeah. And so I think just listen to your kids and be excited and put it in front of them each year. But as far as like going, oh, come on, just do it, you'll have a great time, and trying to convince them over and over again, like after a couple of times of saying, hey, it's going to be great, that's fine, because that's how you introduce things, is by sharing your enthusiasm for it. But after, mentioning it a few times, if they're really not into it, just drop it, and kind of, wait.
I love that point, because, if we get over enthusiastic, a couple of things happen. Number one, you can get them to a place where they're like, they keep trying to get me to do this thing that I tell them I don't want them to do. They don't really understand me or know me, right? If they think that's something I'm going to enjoy. So you put that hurdle in your way. And then also, if you keep encouraging it so much, you're going to have fun, you make that choice to go to camp more about you than it is about them, right? It's more about satisfying. My mom is sure I'm going to have so much fun if I go. So I'm doing it to satisfy her, right? Like, and either way, you have kind of, we've taken that choice out of their hands. And so that's just an extra hurdle to overcome once they show up, right? They have to work through that for it to become their own experience at that point, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And like you said, there's so many years where it's an option, right? So even if it takes a couple of years or 3 years until, they feel they're ready, or it connects with them in a new way, it's like, that does sound like something I'd have fun doing now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just sharing it, and then that seed is planted. They know it's there. You can, hey, registration is in a month or two. Let me know if that's something you'd like to do this year. Just mentioning it so that the ball is still in their court. And of course, you can tell when you're having that conversation if they come and say maybe. Do they want to have more conversation with you? Do they want to learn a little bit more? Do they want a little bit of encouragement? that's something that, especially as unschooling parents, we have that connection and relationship with our kids, that we can do that dance. We can figure out if they're looking for more information, if they're looking for a little bit of encouragement, and we can do all that. But that's the whole difference, right? It's at their it's their motivation. We're helping them. We're not making it about us trying to convince them.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
It's kind of the same thing, but the motivation is so different. It ends up being an entirely different thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And some kids, I've had parents contact me and say, my 11-year-old is ready to go now, you know? And I'm like, well, 11 might be a little too young. Even if it's a mature 11, there are still so many things that are, you know, going to be discussed. And, you know, we have gender and sexuality discussions, and not that 11-year-olds shouldn't be exposed to that, because I think those things are really important. But, you know, just that independence and autonomy and all of that is still really developing at that age. And so I'm always like, well, just let's wait another year. Maybe 12 will be fine. And we've had several 12-year-olds who've come, and they're just like ready. They're so ready. But for the most part, I encourage people to come when they're 13. And although that's just an arbitrary, you know, oh, now they're a teenager, that's just what we've learned. There is some validity to that concept of readiness to be in a group setting, especially with kids who are much older, and, you know, wanting to be able to connect with people. And I used to think that I didn't want to have that sort of school mentality of ages, you know, and that, you know, you can be friends with people of all ages. And that's what I was really encouraging. And so up until just a few years ago, our mentor groups were all ages. Like each mentor group was 13 through 18, 19. Because I felt like that diversity, and everybody could, you know, you would have older kids who could sort of be like an older brother sister situation to younger campers. But my kids actually convinced me a few years ago that they thought it would be better if the mentor groups were a little bit more age centered. So I adjusted it a little bit to where, like, this group is 13 to 15. And this group is like 16 to 17. And then we have, you know, that's not exactly the breakdown, but the ages were closer. And we have found that it does work out a lot better, because they are coming together with a group of kids who they just naturally are at a similar place in life, with experiences and maturity and ability to connect to each other, especially in the older groups where they're not, you know, having to hold back with like certain discussions that maybe 13-year-olds aren't ready to have. So that has really worked out really well. And I pick certain mentors that are really, really good with the younger kids, so that they can, in fact, you had two of them on here, Alec and Max. They are so great with first year campers that I just sometimes watch them and I just want to cry, because they have that ability to take these kids who are like, oh, they've come in and everything's new and they've never been here before, and to just, you know, break them into the camp environment so gently and so beautifully that I'm so glad that my kids convinced me to do that, to consider that my idea of, you know, separation by age was negative, and that there were positives that can come from a loosely being separated by age, you know, age ranges. And so anyway, sure.
Now that you say that makes a lot of sense now when you're looking back at it. Because as I was thinking about that, you know, because these mentor groups are for, you know, the more personal connection, and they're seeing each other every day, and engaging with this smaller group more personally, I would imagine. And, you know, when I think of unschooling kids and teens, they're so cognizant of their environment for the most part.
Mhm.
But I can imagine older teens not wanting to bring up certain topics or subjects or discussions when younger kids are around, just
Right.
because they're considerate of the
Right.
people that they're
Yes.
with,
Yes.
right? And that they'd be looking for people who are at, to have those more personal discussions with people who are around the same level of experience, ages, that are going to be encountering those kinds of situations, so that they would
Right.
have something to share, something to add to the conversation, and also might benefit from it, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yay, kids, right? They're awesome. I learn
Yeah.
so much from my kids.
Yes.
It really isn't about, I mean, they're my kids because, yes, physically they're my kids, but they're people. They're
Yeah.
capable, wonderful, intelligent people that are great to have conversations with and to listen to, because they bring so many great ideas to the table, don't they?
Yeah.
Okay, so before we wrap up here, I would love to know what you're most looking forward to at camp this year.
Ah. Well, I'm not sure if you were aware of this or not, but last year we moved to a new location due to some. The location that we had been at for a long time was a church-related facility, and they started to express their. I get kind of emotional when I talk about this.
Yeah.
They started to express their concern about the fact that we had transgender kids, that we have a paint wall. We have this paint wall that's this canvas that the kids can paint on all week long, and it's beautiful and fun. And then at the end of the week, I cut it up into these scraps, and everybody can take home a piece of the paint wall.
Yeah.
But sometimes they paint what they're excited about, and sometimes they would say things like gay or
Yeah.
different things. And the facility was expressing their concern about that. They didn't want to see that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They told us that kids were to be in the boy cabin and girl cabin based on gender at birth.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
So after a lot of discussion with them and their unwillingness, and basically saying that it would be up to me to make sure that happened, to make sure that these rules were followed, I said, that would mean I would be taking a safe space and asking them to do what happens in mainstream society, which is try to fly under the radar, try to hide who you are. And I said, I cannot ask my campers or my staff to do that. So we found a new facility that is amazing. When I came to them, I said, this is the situation. They said, we support anyone who is out there trying to make lives better for kids. And they were just like, come on. And so our new facility, which is Montvale in Maryville, Tennessee, they're amazing. And they're not a church-based facility. They are an adoption. It's just the camp that they use when they have camps for their families and kids who've been adopted. And they're just amazing. And they have dogs that they've rescued. And I just love them so much. But so last year was our first year there. And this is our second time having to move to a new facility. And the first time in a new space is always filled with a lot of anxiety for me, and trying to make things work in ways that they worked in our old place and still be just as enjoyable. So the thing that I'm looking forward to the most this year is coming back to a space that is now camp, is not just like, oh, this is a new place. Now this is the camp. And being able to just relax into that feeling of familiarity and routine, and knowing, how the days will go in this new place. And so, yeah, that may not be a particular thing or event, but for me, as a person with a lot of social anxiety in new places, coming back to something that's familiar is really exciting.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that makes so much sense, Laura, right? Because last year you went and it was all about not knowing for sure how things were going to flow, how they were going to fit into not only the atmosphere you're trying to create, but the routine, the flow of the days, the
Right.
kinds of activities that you like to do,
Yeah.
the kitchen, having the food,
Yeah, the kitchen. Oh my gosh. Scotty has been, he's just like, wow, the kitchen's really different. And so having to figure out, that's probably the hardest thing, was because when you're running a kitchen, the flow is super important. So figuring that out has been really fun for
yeah.
him.
I can, and I know how hard it is too. That happened to me one year. I hosted a conference for like 6 years, and one year after at a venue that was church based, they also weren't too happy in the end and had some requirements that they want. But after moving through that, I found an amazing space for the next time. And it's like, wow, this is, more perfect. But it is such a challenging thing to work through. But I loved hearing, how you went through it. And it's like we said, hard times come up, right? But we keep, that's where we're like, okay, these are the things that are really important to me and for the work that I'm doing. And these are the things I'm not going to give up on. So my next baby step is, I'm going to start looking other places. Right. And those are scary things to do. But so often things end up turning, even if you ended up with an interim one, you're stepping forward, and stepping forward is the only direction to go. Right.
Right. And it challenges you in a way that you hadn't been challenged before. And that's part of me personally, that was part of a big growth spurt for me, to have to come face to face with someone looking at me and saying, all of these things, and holding it together. When we left that meeting, my husband said that he was surprised I didn't cry. I was actually able to hold it together and stand my ground. And it was like, oh, I have that in me. And so, whenever challenges arise, like we talked before about, the perfect outcomes of our children by doing X, Y, and Z, it's like the challenges that we face in situations are all part of that growth. Part of the growth for us, part of the growth for the kids. And, going to a new facility, I know that there were some campers that have the similar challenges that I do. It's like, oh, new space, scary, new space, scary, because so that was a challenge for them to be like, well, do I love camp enough to overcome my anxiety about going to a new space?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, and rolling with it. And so, yeah, it's all about growth whenever these challenges, whatever they are in life, you can either let it crush you, or you can figure out a way to make it a part of your journey that is positive in the end, even though it's hard during.
Exactly. Even though it's hard, because it challenges us to find new spaces inside ourselves, right? To find, it really asks you, well, what's most important to me? Right. I have to ask myself those questions, and why am I, working through why that hurt so much? And there's nothing wrong with it hurting so much, but that's where you find those pieces, right? That it's because this is really important to me, and I can understand, I know where they're coming from, but it's not me, but you have to get that, because at first it's hurt, and it's, oh my gosh. And it's all those like embarrassed kind of things. And then you realize, oh, but no, this is okay. This is something I want to stand for. I want to be, encourage, etc. Yeah. Big growth. Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today, Laura. I really appreciate it. And it was so much fun, so interesting. I loved hearing so much more about your camp.
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me. I love
And before we go, where's the best place for people to find out more about camp and maybe register for this summer?
Okay, you can go to etusk.com. It's ETUSC.com. And I just updated the website this year. I'm pretty happy with it. And you can just look through the website there, and if there's anything on there that doesn't answer all your questions, you can always email me. My email is on the contact page, but I try to put as much information on the website as possible so that people can, get a feel for it and know what it's all about. And there's a registration page and lots of information there as well. And so yeah, just etusk.com.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a great website. There is lots of information there. You explain a lot, which I thought was great because, we like to gather that information and start to feel out whether it feels like a good connection, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Before we take the next step. So yeah, they don't they can do that themselves without having to keep emailing you with questions. Oh, that's
But I don't
awesome.
mind. Yeah, questions
Yeah,
are
no,
okay.
you don't mind the questions, but I know for myself, I don't like to have to ask a lot of questions because I feel like I'm bothering somebody, right? So that's why I always like to put as much information as, like, even when I was running the conferences and center, as much information out there so people can get, a good idea first, and then it's like, oh, it's just little details here and there. Then they're more comfortable to reach out.
Yeah, I know that some in the past, especially in the first couple of years, it was the questions I got from potential campers or their parents that helped me know what to put on the FAQ.
Exactly.
Like, oh, that's a good question. Didn't think of that. And so, that's, I'm just one person. I can't think of everything.
Exactly.
The community is really helpful.
Yeah. I was going to say, that's the joy of experience, right? As we gain experience and figure things out, then we can better put stuff out there. Yeah. Anyway, well, thank you so much again, Laura, and have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you so much, Pam.
Bye.
Bye.